Your house is worth $400,000 today. But what if I told you that number might mean absolutely nothing a year from now? Not because the housing market crashed or we hit a recession, but because the dollars we're using to measure it simply stopped working. Sound impossible? It's happened before, more times than you think. And when it does, something wild happens to real estate that most people never see coming. Let me tell you a story about a guy I'll call Stefan. He lived in Vienna in the early 1920s and made what seemed like the smartest financial move of his life. He sold his small apartment building for a massive profit. We're talking generational wealth. He put all that cash in the bank and felt like a genius. 2 years later, that same money couldn't buy him a sandwich. Meanwhile, his buddy, who everyone thought was reckless, the guy who borrowed a ton of money to buy property right before everything fell apart, he ended up owning 5 buildings, free and clear. Not because he paid off the loans, because the money he owed became worthless. This actually happened. And understanding why will change how you think about money, debt, and real estate forever. When a currency collapses, weird things start to happen fast. The first thing people do is panic, but not how you'd expect. They don't run to the bank to get their money out. They run away from money entirely, because they realize the paper in their wallet is losing value by the hour. This happened in Venezuela just a few years ago. People would get paid on Friday morning and literally run to the store to spend it before lunch. Not because they wanted stuff, but because if they waited until the afternoon, their paycheck would buy half as much. When money starts dying, people grab onto anything real, anything physical, food, tools, cars, and if they can afford it, real estate. Houses become life rafts in a sinking ship. A house is still a house whether your currency is strong or worthless. It still keeps the rain off your head. It's real and solid when everything else is falling apart. So property prices explode. Not because houses got better, but because the money got worse. In Zimbabwe in 2008, a normal house went from costing a few $1 million to literally trillions in a matter of weeks. The house didn't change. The money just kept dying. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the part that feels almost illegal to talk about. If you own a house with a mortgage when the currency collapses, you hit the jackpot. I know that sounds crazy because we're all taught that debt is bad and you should pay it off as fast as possible. But in a currency collapse, that logic flips completely upside down. Let me walk you through this. Say you bought a house last year for $400,000. You got a 30-year fixed mortgage at 6%. Your payment is about $2,400 a month. That payment is locked in stone for 30 years. Now, the dollar starts to collapse. Inflation goes insane. A gallon of milk goes from $4 to $40 to $400. Your salary, if you're lucky, goes from $80,000 to $800,000 to $8 million. This is exactly what happened in Germany, Hungary, and Venezuela. What about your mortgage payment? Still, $2,400. That payment that used to take you 3 days of work to earn now takes 3 hours, then 3 minutes. It becomes like paying your mortgage with pocket change. In a year, you could potentially pay off your entire $400,000 mortgage with what you earn in a single day. The bank gets their $400,000 back. Sure, but those dollars aren't worth anything close to what they lent you. You essentially got a free house. The bank got destroyed. This isn't theory. This happened to millions of people in Germany in 1923. People literally paid off their mortgages with money they found in their coat pockets. The people who borrowed money to buy real things became the new rich class overnight. The people who saved money and did everything responsibly got wiped out. But hold on, not everyone wins. Let me be very clear about who gets rich and who gets destroyed. You win big if you own property with a fixed-rate mortgage. The debt disappears. The house stays. You also win if you own property outright, but not as dramatically. The house still has value because it's real, but you don't get that magic trick where your debt evaporates. Now, the losers. And this is rough. Renters get absolutely demolished. This is the worst position to be in. You own nothing and have zero protection. Your landlord's costs are exploding: property taxes, repairs, everything. They pass that straight to you. Your rent goes from $1,500 to $15,000 to $150,000 a month. Your paycheck might go up, but it never keeps up. People with variable rate mortgages are in serious trouble. As inflation explodes, the government jacks up interest rates, and savers. People who did everything right, worked hard, saved money, avoided debt, they get annihilated. That $200,000 you spent 20 years saving, maybe it buys you a used car, if you're lucky. The system rewards people who owed money and destroys the people who saved it. It's completely backwards. Here's one more thing most people don't think about. Real estate doesn't just hold value during a currency collapse, it becomes the actual currency. When the Soviet Union was falling apart, people in Moscow started trading apartments for things. You didn't buy a car with money, you traded a percentage of your apartment for it. The apartment was the money because it held value when paper didn't. This could absolutely happen here. Imagine a world where you don't buy something for $50,000. You trade a 10% stake in your rental property for it. Sounds insane, but we've seen it happen over and over throughout history. Now, you might be thinking, wouldn't the government step in? Wouldn't they try to stop a complete financial meltdown? Of course, they would. But here's the scary part. Almost everything they try could make it worse. Imagine they freeze rents, cap what landlords can charge. That sounds fair on the surface, right? But then landlords can't cover their costs. Maintenance stops. They start abandoning their properties. And forget about new apartments getting built. There's no money in it anymore. So the housing supply collapses, leading to even fewer places to live and massive waiting lists. This isn't just theory. The US did this during World War II with strict rent controls. It created a huge black market. The official rent might have been $100, but you had to slip the landlord a $3,000 cash bribe just to get the keys. The controls didn't stop the high costs, they just pushed them underground. So what else could they do? Heavy taxes on real estate, seizing properties that just destroys any incentive to maintain buildings. Everything would fall apart faster than it could be fixed. So how do these kinds of collapses actually end? There's really only one way. You have to kill the old currency and create a brand new one. Germany did this in 1923 after their hyperinflation crisis. They introduced the Rentenmark, backed by real assets like land and factories. One new mark was equal to 1 trillion old, worthless marks. Almost overnight, the new money had value because it was tied to something real. The hyperinflation stopped in its tracks. If the US dollar were to collapse, we'd likely do something similar. Create a new currency, maybe call it a new dollar, and back it with gold, oil, or a basket of different assets. Each new dollar might be worth, say, 10,000 old dollars. Your debts, your savings, everything gets converted at that new rate. Life slowly reorganizes, but here's the twist. This is where the massive wealth transfer happens. If you had a $300,000 mortgage in old dollars, it suddenly converts to just 30 new dollars. You basically owe nothing. Your house becomes yours, almost for free. That's how borrowers win, and savers get completely wiped out. So, is this actually going to happen in America? An overnight collapse like that is pretty unlikely. The dollar is just too important to too many powerful people in countries around the world, but a slow decline, a slow motion version of this, that's not just possible, it's already happening. Think about it. If you locked in a 3% mortgage back in 2021, and inflation has been running at 5 or 6% since then, you're already winning this game. Your debt is shrinking in real terms every single year. The bank is effectively losing money on your loan. It's the exact same mechanism as a hyperinflation collapse, just stretched out over decades instead of months. The real lesson here isn't to panic. It's to understand that real things matter more than paper money. Physical assets, things that actually exist in the world, have enduring value, no matter what numbers we print on a piece of paper. A house provides shelter. That's valuable whether you measure it in dollars, gold coins, or seashells. The currency is just the measuring stick. And when the measuring stick breaks, we just get a new one. But the house is still standing. The people left holding just the paper when it breaks, they're the ones who lose everything. This really changes how you should think about debt, about saving, and about what wealth truly is. Wealth isn't the number in your bank account. Wealth is what that number can actually buy you in the real world. And when the numbers stop making sense, what you physically own is the only thing that counts. If the dollar collapses, real estate doesn't just vanish. It doesn't lose its fundamental purpose. It's still space, still shelter, still ground under your feet. But the people who understood the game and positioned themselves correctly are the ones who end up owning it. And the people who played by the old rules, who saved paper and avoided debt, they can end up with nothing. This story isn't new. It's been told in German, in Hungarian, in Zimbabwean, in Venezuelan. The only question isn't whether it could be told in English. The question is whether you'll understand what's happening before it's too late. Thanks for watching.